My name's Mayor, and
I got deposed by the DCI, by the sheriff's office.
good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Monday, October 17, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll go ahead and get started by reading our roll, please, Tom.
Council members Cole,
Here.
Jensen,
Here.
McCoris,
Here.
Neitzert,
Here.
Selberg,
Here.
Sale,
Here.
Starr,
Here.
Baranko.
Here. All right, we welcome Pastor Rick Carlson from Prairie Hills Covenant Church to give our invocation tonight. So I ask you to stand for his invocation and then stay standing for our Pledge of Allegiance to immediately follow.
Join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, our request tonight is simple. We pray for wisdom. With wisdom that there would be understanding. With understanding, compassion. With compassion that we would reflect your Son, Jesus. Pray for these women and men as they do your work, and that out of this there would be joy. Pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Pastor Carlson, for tonight's invocation. We'll move on to item 4, consent agenda. Any changes to be made there, Council? Councilor Sale.
Mr. Mayor, I would request to pull sub-item 3 from agenda item 6 on the consent agenda and place on the regular agenda.
All right, so noted. Any other changes there? All right, I'll take a motion then to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval. Sale.
Second. Okay, motion by Sale, seconded by Selberg. Any discussion there?
Mr.
Councilor
Mayor,
Neitzert.
I just want to point out for the public and for the council that by my count, there are 14 video lottery establishment items that are going to be on the agenda that we're about to approve to be heard on November 1st. Just as some historical context, in all of 2019, we approved 17 licenses. 2020 was 19 licenses. So far this year, we've approved 27 licenses. The 14 licenses we'll be talking about would be almost as much as we've approved in the last 2 years, each individual year. So things are definitely changing, and we need to get a handle on this, so we need to be prepared to talk about this on November 1st. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Any other discussion? All right, let's vote on the motion to approve then.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes. All right, that passes 8-0. We'll move to item 51, our regular agenda. Look for a motion to approve that.
Move approval, Jensen. Second, Selberg.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Selberg to approve that. Councilor Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd make a motion to amend the regular agenda items 84 through 86 immediately after agenda item 75.
All right, we got a second for that?
Second Cole.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Cole to move those items. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes. All right, that passes 8-0. Back to the main motion now as amended. Any other changes there? All right, let's take a vote on it then, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes. All right, that passes 8-0. Before we move on with our agenda for the night then, public input for regular agenda items, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input will be limited to 5 minutes. And for all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration at the time only. During general public input at the end of the meeting, comments are 3 minutes per person and on topics we didn't discuss earlier. So with that being said, we're going to move to sub-item 3, pulled from agenda item 6.
Yes, Mayor, that item is Planning and Development Services, DSU Applied Research Grant Agreement, Dakota State University and Board of Regents for $10 million.
Councilor Seal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know Director Pritchard's here, and he'd like to give us some more details on that. agreement.
Good evening,
Evening,
Council.
John.
So the item here on the consent agenda, it relates to the Dakota State University Applied Research Lab. This was a project that's been discussed quite a bit, both in the media and within this council. It relates to the construction of that Dakota State Applied Research Lab here in the city of Sioux Falls. The total project is $90 million. They received $50 million as a donation for construction and operations of the building from T. Denny Sanford. The city of Sioux Falls appropriated for a $10 million grant to utilize toward the building construction as well as infrastructure and operations. There was $30 million received from the state of South Dakota for programmatic expansion to support these type of facilities at Dakota State University, and then they also received a land donation from Sanford Health for the location of this facility. The $10 million was supplementally appropriated by the city of Sioux Falls back in March 8th and 15th, 2022. We discussed this project in pretty detailed fashion at that time. I did want to give you a little bit of an update as to what is all involved in this agreement. So the agreement actually executes the transfer of these funds that have been appropriated for this purpose. The agreement is between the Dakota State University, the South Dakota Board of Regents, and the city of Sioux Falls. It has been approved by the Board of Regents in early October. It has been already signed by Dakota State University as well as the Board of Regents. It prescribes the terms of the transfer of the $10 million to the Board of Regents. This would be done as a one-time transfer. We're looking to time this in late November or early December from a cash management perspective. That's when we receive the second half of our property taxes, so we won't be pulling from investments to support this transfer. The funds would then be administered by the Board of Regents. They have already received and done all the documentation related to the Sanford grant and the land donation. While the land ownership hasn't been transferred that I'm aware of, the Board of Regents has voted to accept the gift of the land where the facility is going to be constructed. The term of the agreement is set to be at 10 years. The date required for construction to be completed is December 31st, 2026. Unless it's administratively extended outside of the control of the Board of Regents. The City of Sioux Falls is appointed observer status with the DSU ARC Board of Directors. So as I understand it, the DSU ARC, that would be a nonprofit corporation, the members being Dakota State University as well as the South Dakota Board of Regents, and they would be charged with operating and managing the facility. Observer status, typically we would look for ex officio status as a board member on these boards. However, this is a unique board in that you have to have certain security clearances in order to be on the board, even with an ex officio status. So that's why essentially the observer really is the same rights and entitlement as an ex officio. You're a non-voting member, but you have the opportunity to be attending as well as be engaged in all of that. And that was the key thing, is that we would be engaged with the project, continue to be updated, not just through construction, but during ramp up of that facility in its first 10 years of operations. There are assurances with the agreement for use of the land and building for the Applied Research Lab for a minimum of 10 years. If it is not completed by the construction completion date, the city funds would be returned if the construction completion date is not otherwise extended. And it also requires that this facility be used by the DSU Applied Research Lab project for that full 10-year period. If it's not, the city is entitled to return a prorated portion for the time period in which it was not. So we wanted to build that in there, just really looking to make sure that our funds, with the large investment that was being made by the city, that we could guarantee the use of that building for the specific purposes for which it was intended for a minimum of 10 years. Kind of looked at our state theater grant, which a much smaller scale, but we had structured that as a 10-year agreement at that time. There's annual reporting requirements from DSU ARC, including reporting annually on the number and average salaries of the employees that would be employed or subcontractors at DSU ARL, the number of square feet occupied, number of private contracts, yearly student and employee recruitment procedures and outcomes, progress report, and then, of course, the use of city funding and any other detailed information that might be requested. It also includes a requirement that if requested, that they would provide an annual presentation to the Sioux Falls City Council to provide an update on the progress of the project, and it also has rights to auditing for the use of the city funds within the project. And with that, unless you have any further questions, I'll stand by. Thank you.
All right, anyone from the public here to speak on this item tonight? All right. Counselor Seal, you have any questions for Sean on this, or?
I do not.
All right, any other counselors then want to speak to this item? Counselor Starr?
Yes. Can you pull the slide back up that talked about the guarantees? When it says that there was a requirement for an update to the council annually, I'm missing that in the agreement, but that's because I just didn't get a copy of the agreement till this afternoon. So where am I finding the annual requirement for the annual update?
Let me see if I can point it out real quick here.
Not saying it's not there, I'm just saying I wasn't smart enough to find it.
I believe it's in section 7H. Last sentence, BOR and/or DSU shall, upon reasonable request, provide an in-person updates regarding the Sioux Falls ARL project to the Sioux Falls City Council, which typically will not be more than once each calendar year.
Thank you. The other, let me go back. The auditing requirements are just for the length of the 10-year agreement, correct? Is that
Correct. I don't know if there's survivability of that off the top of my head, or how that was written. I'd have to go back and look at that specific provision, if it survives the agreement term or not.
That's fine. The observer that would serve on the 501c3 board that's required in the agreement, how is that person selected?
It's mayor appointed.
Is that with advice and consent of the council then?
I don't think it specifically states in there.
Should it? I mean, all the other mayoral appointments require advice and consent of the council?
Not necessarily. Like our ex officio members of certain boards, like the State Theater, are not necessarily council approved appointments.
Thank you.
Any other questions for anyone on the council? All right, so can I get a motion approved?
Move to approve, Sale.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Sales, seconded by Jensen. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Counselor Starr?
I did have one more question on page 6. It is sub-item 6, or Roman numeral 6. It's at the top of page 6. I had one more question.
Go ahead.
In the item, it says that the audit firm would be, I'm sorry, page 6, top of the page, or 4?
Yep.
Or I always mess up the Roman numerals at 6. Should it say that the board, that the audit committee should be selected by, it says DSU, but not DSU ARC? Or because shouldn't the nonprofit board be the one selecting their auditing requirement?
Well, technically, both the BOR and DSU are the members of the ARC, so typically they would probably self-select it as the DSU ARC. But they're both members and represented on the board.
But we don't know the members of the board because the board hasn't been made up yet, correct?
Well, we know that the corporate incorporators are DSU and the Board of Regents, so one would make I believe the initial board of directors does include the president of DSU as well as, I believe, the legal counsel for the Board of Regents.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a vote on this, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Mercouris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Move on to unfinished business, item 52.
Item 52, deferred for the meeting of Tuesday, October 4th, 2022, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 7500 and 7608 South Hanson Place from the AG Agriculture District to the RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density and the RA2 Apartment Residential Moderate Density Districts, number 16794-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Pending motion for the meeting of Tuesday, October 4, 2022. Motion to approve by Councilmember Jensen and seconded by Councilmember Selberg. Private applicant Sayer Associates Thad Roberts.
Jeff, before I turn it over to you, just want to remind the council, so this item was deferred from our October 4 meeting, so it's up for final consideration. Now, Jeff will make some remarks and comments kind of to freshen this up from the 4th. We'll have public comment, and there's a motion on the floor. So after public comment, we'll move right into any debate on this. So that's where we're at on it. Jeff, go ahead.
Very good, thank you. Jeff Eckhoff, Planning and Development Services. Jason Bieber's on vacation this week, so I'm pinch hitting for him, along with the help of Kristen Bennett, who is behind me. If you have any deep zoning questions, she can certainly answer those. And then Shannon Austin is here as well for other issues, but can also address the Hanson Place and any questions on roads or access. So this is the second reading. The applicant is Thad Roberts. The owner is Jason Benson. The site is located north of West 85th Street and east of South Tallgrass, and it's about 11.71 acres. And the purpose of the rezone is to rezone, construct 2- and 3-story apartment buildings, RA1 and RA2. As you know from the last meeting, there was a neighborhood meeting, and it was sent back. There was a second meeting held last Wednesday at Craig Yoder's house. About 20 people attended, including the applicant and as well as Jason. The discussion included South Hanson Place upgrades. City staff indicated that before development can happen, the developer that buys the land would have to finish the east half of Hanson from 85th Street all the way to the north. It'd be a 40-foot right-of-way with about 32 foot of pavement. It would allow for 2-way traffic. There'd be sidewalk, curb and gutter on the west side, and the city would maintain that. Additional discussion included downzoning the 3-story apartments next to South Hanson Place to 2 stories. Other items including concerns, increased traffic, detention pond safety, and property value concerns. Currently, the rezone before you is unchanged from the October 4th City Council meeting.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, anyone from the public here to speak on this item, come on up. First come, first served. Come on up. Good evening, sir.
I'm Craig Yoder, 26988 Cactus Place. Jeff, he spoke of the meeting that we had at my house, and it was very productive. We got a lot of things straightened out, and it was nice that the landowner, Jason Benson, explained things, as well as Jeff Bieber from the city kind of straightened out some questions we had on how the road was going to be put in, and we greatly appreciate that. Meeting lasted an hour and a half, and it was a very relaxed atmosphere. Wasn't combative at all. It was a great meeting, and we really appreciate the council giving us the extra 2 weeks. It worked out really well, and it was a great decision on the council's part, so we appreciate that. We didn't get an agreement between the landowner and, of course, the community there to come to an agreement on the land, on its use. We would like to see the whole area RA1 instead of RA1 and RA2. Bring it all down to 2-story apartments just for a better blend. We didn't think that the landowner would go for a wholly just residential area just due to his economics on the property, which we totally understand. Is, you know, he has to come out ahead financially, and we understand that. We'd just like to see the whole thing as an RA1 rather than RA1, RA2 mix. So we ask that you consider that tonight as you go through the process here. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Craig. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Council. Trent Swanson, 140 North Phillips Avenue here in Sioux Falls. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Bentwood Place, Inc., and Jason Benson. I attended the meeting, as Mr. Yoder indicated, was held last Wednesday night. I agree it was a very cordial, professional meeting. Jason Bieber was able to answer the questions about the width of Hanson Place and what the requirement of the developer would be for that. There's no imminent plans to develop this property. Rather, the applicant at this point in time is just preparing the property for future sale and future development. We're looking at the properties that surround the area and how they're being developed. The property has some low area characteristics, and the city's looking at putting in a detention pond on the south side, as was noted at the last city council meeting. You know, the property's at the intersection of a collector and an arterial street, Hanson Place and 85th Street. We believe that's consistent with the comprehensive plan where it says apartments are well suited to go in an area such as that. The RA2 is what our client feels is the zoning that needs to make this economically feasible, at least the southern part of it. As was noted, they did agree to lesser zoning on the northern part of it, immediately adjacent to some of those townhomes along Shimpton Street as shown on the plans. But an RA1 zoning across the board just doesn't make economic viability sense to the client. RA2 is also something that's been a consistent zoning for the properties that are immediately south of 85th Street as well. If the applicant or if the council moves forward, any future buyer will have to develop the property, of course, with the zoning requirements, the setback requirements, and all subdivision ordinances at that point in time. The Hanson Place right-of-way with the additional 7 feet to make it 40 feet on the east side will result in the 80-foot wider right-of-way there, plus the additional setbacks that the developer would have to adhere to when they're putting in their future apartments. We believe that's ample setback requirements and separation between the rural development to the west of Hanson Place and what eventually will go on the Bentwood property. If you have any questions, we're obviously here to answer them. The client is here as well. Jason Benson's here, and appreciate your time and would ask that you support the rezoning as is.
All right, Travis, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? Come on up. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ryan Waybright. I live at 26987 Hanson Place. So I live right on the southwest corner there where Hanson Place meets Sunnyview Place. Obviously, meaning my property gets very much impacted by your vote tonight. And I appreciate you hearing our concerns and really taking those to heart as you make your decision. We talked about this a lot a couple weeks ago, and I don't want to belabor a lot of these points, but really the key things that come down to it for me for concerns are the traffic. So we're going to put all kinds of traffic through our neighborhood development here. Like I said last time, I mean, this is going to lead to probably 40 to 50 times the amount of traffic that we currently have today on Hanson Place, because right now it's just our residents of the area and any kind of service vehicles that come in through that area. So a lot of that's going to be funneled right to us. And then the other main thing is the overall fit, especially 3-story apartments. If you look at the overall surrounding area, you have 3-story apartments at 69th and Beale, or 69th and Beale, and then 3-story apartments south of Hanson, or south of 85th Street. Otherwise, there's no 3-story apartments in the immediate area right next to where the rezoning is being discussed. And you also have single-family homes and townhomes and duplexes and all 2-story or less. So you really don't have a very good overall fit of 3-story apartments in that area. It seems like it would be a much better fit if it was 2-story and less, and I support what Craig mentioned earlier of rezoning the entire area as RA1. I think you get a better transition, a better blend, a better fit with the overall neighborhood. The other thing that I don't know that's been emphasized quite enough is, we referred to this concept drawing quite a bit last time, but remember, this is only a concept drawing, that Mr. Benson is not going to be the developer, and therefore, as soon as this vote happens tonight and as soon as he sells that property, the developer can do whatever they want with that property based on the zoning. So what we're looking for as a neighborhood is some level of assurance and protection that we're not going to get 3-story apartment buildings built right up on the western side of that property, overshadowing single-family homes. You also have single-family homes right in the midst of that property there. Again, this is just a concept drawing, but as of right now, is sandwiched in between 2- and 3-story apartment buildings, which really doesn't fit and doesn't make sense. I understand there's an economical piece to this too, and that makes sense to me, but I think you can't force something into this area that doesn't really fit with the surrounding and established neighborhood. The other point I want to make, and I don't know that there's any solution here, but there's right now it's suggesting that 83rd Street come across to Sunnyview Place and connect right over there. Again, that's impactful to me because my property sits right in that corner. The piece that I want to point out here to the council is that 83rd Street stub is a very narrow street, and it is going to be highly congested if we have the amount of buildings in this area that are proposed. Those are going to be funneling out through a street that doesn't even have enough width to have parking along the street there. So any kind of service vehicle, garbage truck, FedEx delivery that stops there is going to essentially block that off, eliminating that access for a period of time until that vehicle were to move. It's not a very wide street at all. I appreciate you considering our requests here and our concerns, and I appreciate Mr. Benson being willing to hear those out at the meeting the other night. I think that just overall, as an overall fit, it makes a much more sense as an RA1 for the entire property, and I would just ask that you would consider an amendment to rezone to that level.
All right, Ryan, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this item? Good evening.
I've done this before, so I'm a little nervous.
All right, no
bear
problem.
with me. I'm Roberta Ray. I live at 47128 Sunnyview Place. And my mother and father-in-law bought the acre just to the east of us, so they're at 47132 Sunnyview Place, so they're right on the corner of Sunnyview and Hanson. It was them that actually put in Hanson to go past Sunnyview just a little bit, and then they put in Sunnyview to come right to the end of our lot line. And that was 43 years ago. So we've been living in our house 43 years. We were the first two houses off from 85th Street to be built in that area. Louise and 69th were both gravel roads. We had to take Old Yankton Trail to get into town. So we have seen a lot of building. The city has come out. We are actually surrounded now by the city. And we have enjoyed immensely the peace and quiet of the area. We've gotten to know our neighbors, and everybody has like an acre lot or an acre and a third. I think there might even be an acre and a half lot in that area. And so we've had no problem with all the construction coming out our way until this wanting it to be like 3-story apartments. We are totally in agreement with Craig and Ryan that we would prefer to have like the RA1 for the low density 2-story. And it just seems to kind of odd to have apartment buildings there in the first place. But if that's the way it's going to go, then we would rather prefer the RA1, the 2-story buildings. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Reagan. Anyone else here to speak on this item tonight? Come on up. Good evening, ma'am.
My name is Deb Yoder. I live at 26988 Cactus Place. We have done other presentations to the council 2 weeks ago. One of the points that I would like to maybe reiterate is the fact that there is going to be all the extra traffic coming out from 83rd Street, which really is not wide enough to handle it, bringing that traffic out to Hanson. If you go with the RA2 zoning, what you're looking at is approximately 220 some cars or parking spaces in that area, based on the fact that you have to have 1.5 parking spaces for each apartment. And so again, as has been already said, we're going to have all of that coming out, and 83rd Street can't handle that. If you're going to do that, you would have to, by rights, widen 83rd Street and widen whatever connector into Hanson that you make. Traffic and safety is an issue there. One of the things that Ryan brought up a few minutes ago is the fact that at 7600 South Hanson, you have a residence, which has been annexed, but you have a residence which is surrounded by this property. And you've seen an artist's conceptual drawing, but you've not seen what this would look like from a street view, so let me help you out with that. Here's your visual. You're standing on Hanson Place, you're facing east, and you're looking straight at 7600 South Hanson. Right now, that's open field. It's a nice, big, open area. When you build those apartments, what you're going to have is a berm and then a 6-foot fence all the way around that property. And you're going to feel like you're in a fishbowl. And you're going to have a 2-story apartment on one side and a 3-story apartment on the other. Even if you build a 6-foot fence, they have a bird's eye view. So you've got 6 on the 2-story apartment and 12 on the 3-story apartment looking down into that yard. That's not only not privacy, it's not any open space. So they have lost whatever it was that they felt was important to live in that property. If that was my property and I was in a fishbowl, I would move. One of the things I wonder, I know the city has been talking to the person on the corner of Hanson and 85th, which is going to be next to the detention pond. And what I'm hearing is that very possibly that person is going to sell to the city. I'm wondering if, once that happens, if the individual at 7600 South Hanson feels that this is no longer a comfortable place to live and they sell out. If that begins the process, that's the first of the domino effect. And then as we continue to move around and annex one at a time, what we're doing is pushing people out because they're no longer going to have the style of living that they had when we went out there. Roberta said they've been out there for 43 years. My husband and I have been out there for 26. And one of the things that is important to us is the wide open space. We're going to start losing that. The other night at the meeting, I asked Jason Bieber, the phrase forced annexation comes up every so often. I said, what does that mean? And I didn't really get a good definition. In 2015, the city came to us and strongly suggested we annex and also said that our properties that are outside would have to be rezoned commercial. We refused at that time. So what I'm wondering is if the people on Hanson Place sell and then we have all of this construction around us, if this isn't just a way to force people out. As the domino effect starts, if people aren't going to be forced out so that a contractor or a developer can come in, buy those properties up and turn them commercial, which I suspect is what the city wants. And so I would be very uncomfortable with that line of reasoning. I'm trying to look down into the future, and see what might happen, and that's what I see. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? All right, come on up.
Hi, Hunter Berry. I'm on 5540 East Blarney Place on the northeast side of Sioux Falls. A little bit unfamiliar with this particular area of the city. Just kind of a comment on high density housing in general. I think we need as much of it as possible. The city is growing at kind of an unprecedented rate. Every time I talk to people, I hear the amount of growth we've experienced, especially this year, especially after COVID. We get a ton of people coming here now because everybody has heard about our way of life and our way of government. And we need a place to house all these people. The housing that we have right now just is not adequate to handle the amount of growth that we're getting and that we're anticipated on getting in the future. So just something to keep into consideration. I understand the traffic concerns and the other stuff that's going on with this particular property, but as far as just high density housing is concerned, we absolutely need as much of it as we can get, because otherwise we're going to get into a situation where people can't find a place to live here and their options become restricted, the prices go up, and then people don't have a place to live. More and more people, like I said, are coming here to work. They're starting businesses. We got more companies that are coming here. More workers are coming here. The Amazon plant is almost completed, so that's going to bring in 1,000 jobs, if not more. So I think we need to do the right thing and develop as much housing as possible to accommodate for that extended need for housing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here to speak on this one tonight? Come on up. Go ahead, sir, and then you can come up next. Come on up, man. Doesn't matter. Good evening, sir. What was that? I'm sorry.
My name's Aaron Olson.
You can pull the mics back up. There you go. Thanks,
Okay.
Aaron.
I'm on the corner of Hanson and 85th there on 4713, whatever. City has contacted me about, somebody did 3 weeks ago about me possibly selling. I had to drag it out of her. I haven't heard anything back on that, but I'm not willing to give up my house. My question is, what I'm not understanding or hearing is to widen out Hanson. I mean, you literally, one vehicle makes it through there, another one goes through, you gotta go in somebody's yard. So how is this road getting wider? I mean, how much more land am I gonna lose out of this and my neighbors? I mean, gonna put a sidewalk on the west side of the road? I mean, there's not a lot of room out there to do that. You know, the guy just to the west of me, he just built a house. He's not gonna have a lot of driveway left. I mean, I don't know how that's all figured in. That's my question. Does that make sense?
Thanks, Aaron. Yep. Come on up, sir.
I have some handouts if you guys kind of show the area. My name is Rod Wilson, 26989 Hanson Place. And I can bring these around. So my concern is much like my neighbors. The development's been there almost for 50 years, and it's a residential neighborhood. We have a school that in close proximity. I see kids walking their dogs, families enjoying themselves. And we're gonna go from 10 cars a day in front of my house to an apartment complex, again, that's just a conceptual drawing, up to 300 parking spaces. So 10 cars a day to many more cars going by my house, potentially 200 plus cars a day. We were pretty much told in all the previous meeting that everything was gonna go to Beale because Beale Street is the street with the light on it. But in the last meeting, we were told, and maybe I misunderstood this, Hanson Place is potentially gonna be 80 feet wide. Did I misunderstand something there? A residential street with 10 cars a day and potentially 80 feet wide. But if we look at the first sheet that I label A, it shows basically in the center there is this proposed development. To the east, there's Beale developed that. That's those 2-story apartments. And then there's Beale Avenue, and immediately across the street, they transition down, and Beale owned this property. It's 1-story family homes. And then immediately to the east of that, it's 1-story family homes. So they're transitioning up to 2-story. And then immediately to the west of this proposed development, it's us. A resident, Ryan's kids play in their yard. They have hammocks they swing in. 10 cars a day to 200 plus cars a day. I'm concerned about the safety of people in the neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. It's a neighborhood that actually has a community. We have a school that kids can walk to. That's gonna be completely eradicated and changed. And as far as Mr. Bentwood, and I might have this wrong, let's see here, there's lots of guys out here who want to develop it. Bentwood Place, Inc., the family owns 220 acres in the area, so this 12 acres that they paid $12,000 for in 1983, there's plenty of money to make on just the land alone, regardless of how it gets developed. So I know I have 1.25 acres, and that's the case of that's what we have. I can't speak for everybody over there. Maybe they have a secret trust that I don't know about. But the opportunity is there to make money, regardless of it's 2-story or single-family homes. And the other thing I mentioned is just safety of the traffic for the kids in the neighborhood, and also a 2-acre retention pond that the city of Sioux Falls is gonna make the taxpayer pay for instead of the developer. And that shocks me. And they're also now talking about buying the other piece of land that the gentleman was just up to, that they want to buy that as well. I understand the city's going to grow. All my neighbors understand that the city is growing. But let me just go back to this. So the first page is labeled A. I should point to east and west. The next one is labeled B. and it's kind of showing 82nd Street, Beale Avenue and 83rd Street. Page C shows 83rd Street. All the streets in that neighborhood are largely 34 to 35 feet wide. You know how wide 83rd Street is? That the city planners evidently designed? It's 24 feet wide with 13 double-stall driveways dumping into it in less than 240 feet. So this is the direction that we were told that that's all the traffic's gonna go that way. Are you gonna drive that way when there's all those cars backing out into a congested area before you get to Beale Avenue, the street that has the traffic light on it? That's the street that should have been the wide, you guys have terms for it, but that to handle the traffic. Hanson Place is not it. So I think that's short-sighted. So 23 feet wide, 24 feet wide. The other streets, that 82nd Street is like 34 feet wide. Beale Avenue is 35 feet wide. And again, it's not, we know development is happening. We know 85th is going to have more traffic on it, but that's not what's going to directly impact our neighborhood. This potential development with multiple apartments on it is what is going to impact our neighborhood. And I think we have a right to a quality of life that isn't dramatically changed for one person. We have, is there 15 acreages there? And that's all going to be changed because one person doesn't think he can make enough money on his 12 acres.
Thank you, Rob.
Which is also got serious drainage issues.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Just a reminder, 5 minutes per person to speak on this item. Come on up, sir. Good evening.
My name is Brian Sherhulst. I live at 26976 Cactus Place, just down the road from this development. And I just, it doesn't seem right to me to have a home, a single-family home that could potentially be surrounded on all sides by a 3-story apartment building. I mean, nobody wants to look out their bedroom and see a 3-story apartment, and then out their living room and see another one, and then out their bathroom and see another one. I can't imagine anybody, if that was their home, voting in favor of 3-story apartments all the way around their home. So I just don't see how this is a good fit for this area, and I don't see how anybody could reasonably vote for that type of a setup in this area.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Anyone else to speak on this item tonight? All right, last call, not seeing any. All right, council, there's a motion and a second, motion by Jensen, seconded by Selberg on the floor. Discussion, debate on this. Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director, maybe remind me, I know Jason was here last time, but so it seems to me, if memory serves, a lot of concessions were made at the time. We extended this a couple more weeks to hopefully get a few more. It sounds like one of the folks who got up tonight talked about a good meeting the other night where a number of items were figured out. Can you remind me a little bit about the concessions that have already been made by the applicant, and maybe anything else that's come about in the last 2 weeks?
Sure. The concession, I believe, and they can correct me, from the first neighborhood meeting was the north part of the parcel that would go to initially the request was for the entire parcel to be RA2. And so the first concession was the north piece to go to RA1. My understanding from the meeting last week is very cordial. They had a lot of discussion. Certainly the neighbors had their request, but there was no change to the request or any additional concessions made at that meeting.
So there was a concession made to go to RA1?
At the first meeting for the north half. The second meeting, there were no additional concessions. Good debate, good discussion. The residents certainly made their wishes known, but there was not any changes. So the request tonight comes to you exactly as it did last week.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions or discussion, council, on this one? Councilor Cole.
I have some questions for Director Eckhoff. So just to clarify, you have 2 single-family homes flanking potentially a 3-story apartment building. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and no other options. I know you looked at a number of different options, but there are limitations with the drainage of the property in terms of not using Hanson Place. I'm sorry. Switching from Hanson Place to another inlet for or access point besides 83rd Street in Hanson.
Okay. I would actually defer to Shannon to talk about access.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Hi, Shannon.
Good evening, Shannon Austin from Public Works. I didn't hear your question.
Yeah, I just was wondering, I know there was discussion about a potentially different access point for this area besides Hanson Place and 83rd Place, and it's just not possible with the drainage there, correct? Off of 85th?
That is correct. It
Okay.
does not meet our design standards to allow an access down to 85th Street. What I would like to remind the council is this whole street network to the north isn't built out yet. 77th Street's going to continue over to Tallgrass. Hanson would continue up to 77th Street. 83rd Street was not intended to be a large street. It was just intended to be a relief for some of that development. So without having the total street network yet, it does seem like everything's going to go to Hanson Place, but as soon as we get additional streets over to Tallgrass, we get Tallgrass paved hopefully next year, there'll be other ways to get in and out of this area, except for just Hanson Place.
Other questions? Counselor Cole? Okay. Counselor Jansen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And anyone can hit it, but could you go back to where the zoning is, where we'd see RA2? Okay, that's fine. So I remember probably before the election, we talked about 85th and Brett. There's an RA2 right there, and there's a single-family house that still is not annexed into the city. And we changed that zoning to RA2 right there. It's a vacant field there on 85th and Brett. And then just south of 85th there, there's RA2 as well. Just kind of looking at that. And then there's RA2 right there on South Townsley and 85th Street as well, and even more to the south. This all fits in to the Shape Places comprehensive plan from what the representative of the landowner was saying. Is that accurate?
Good evening, Kristen Bennett from Planning and Development Services. That is accurate. I cannot, I apologize off the top of my head, I don't have the exact classification that this intersection of 85th and Tallgrass is according to the Shape Places Comprehensive Plan, but I do know that the areas that are already zoned do fit that zoning.
All right,
Could I ask
Counselor
another
Jansen, go
question?
ahead.
And it's about the traffic scenario, you know, and we can't study it until it actually happens, right? But you know, to the individual's comment on the 10 cars per day in front of their home and their kids and et cetera, you know, there's probably more than 10 cars in front of my house where my kids play at every day. So have you guys talk about the traffic and what concerns you've addressed internally to be comfortable with this plan?
Sure. Shannon Austin again with the Public Works. So typically, according to our traffic generation trip rates, single-family homes typically have about 10 trips per day. And so if you think about your own coming and going from your house, you're leaving, that's a trip, you're coming back, that's a trip. So typical collector streets, which Hanson and Beale and 77th Street are typical collector streets. They're typically designed to carry anywhere between, 1,000 to probably 4,000. So 77th Street right now, which is on the top east-west collector street, that carries about 2,300 vehicles a day. And 77th Street is a traffic signalized intersection at Louise. Beale carries about 1,500 cars a day, and that's a signalized intersection up at 69th Street. But there's still a lot of development yet to happen. Hughes, which is adjacent to the school, Harrisburg Elementary School, a little bit to the east of here, that carries around 1,200. So, I mean, we anticipate Hanson would carry, in this particular area, it's probably going to carry about 1,000. I bet today it probably carries 150 cars to 200. So yes, it's going to grow, absolutely, because there is attractions once the interchange gets constructed and there's retail and city facilities at the interchange. There will be attractions that everyone in this area can go to. So it is tough. It's tough to surround rural residential with with the city. Did I answer your question?
Perfect. Thank
Okay,
you very
good.
much. I appreciate it.
Very good.
Counselor Cole?
I could be mistaken. This may not be a question for you, sir. I
Okay.
don't know who to direct it. But south of 85th Street, those RA2s are all 2-story. They're not 3-story, as well as to the east, to the north.
I apologize, but I don't know exactly how tall those are.
I used to live actually just east of this in the VL townhomes, so I walk this area quite a bit, and there are no 3-story. There's construction right now at 85th and Brett. I don't know how tall that, if it's a complex, I don't know if it's a 2 or 3-story.
I do believe south of Townsley in that area, there are some 3-story apartment
Oh,
houses going up
very
when
south,
you go
yes,
a little
but
bit further
not
south.
directly across.
Okay.
Okay.
Other questions or discussion here tonight? Counselor Neitzer?
I wrote a bunch of notes as people were talking, so I just want to go through some things real quick. First of all, this is a major conundrum because if you take the rural subdivision out, it makes total sense what they're asking to do. But the rural subdivision is here, and trying to figure out what you do when city meets the rural is really difficult because I see both sides. There was a question, I think, about the apartments, and they would require a 25-foot front yard setback, so they'd be 25 feet back from Hanson Place. Rear yards are 10 feet. Yeah, yes, it is a concept plan that we're seeing, so we have to take that with a grain of salt and not take too much into it, but there are setbacks. The city's not in the business of forced annexation. I wouldn't be too worried about that. 85th and Tallgrass is a red dot. It's a regional employment node. It's going to be the biggest node in the city. It's going to be incredibly busy. The drainage pond was mentioned, and I believe that the drainage is actually, it's capturing drainage all coming from the south. It's extra capacity. It's not going to serve this apartment complex. So the city's not building a drainage pond for the development. One thing I would mention about traffic is, yes, apartments do generate traffic, but I will tell you, I live next door to an apartment, and I will tell you, it's not a church, it's not a concert. Everybody doesn't leave at the same time. So I can sit and I can look out my window and I can see a car go, and I can watch for 10 minutes, and then one more car goes. So there isn't like a huge flood of vehicles. Yes, it adds up, but it's usually, it's not near what people would fear. So again, we're kind of running into the 3-story issue, you know. The 3-story is what the real trigger is for people, and I totally honor it and I get it because they can look very foreboding. And I should mention that I do remember, and I'm sure Councilor Selberg and Starr remember the Brett and 85th vividly, that particular rezone. That was a big one. That it was a Costello property, and it's been since sold, I believe. And we put, I think, a 40-foot buffer yard in the back, backing up to the homes, to the single-family homes. But otherwise, we did rezone it to RA2, and there was a few other things. And I think I think the new developer might be doing 3-story, but I'm not certain. So I'm conflicted on this one because it makes sense, but what do you do about the fact that you have this single family here? The only other thing I would point out that makes me lean a little bit, but I'm not sure. Now, people will say it's my backyard. I use my backyard, so they're going to say this is not valid, and I get it. But rural subdivision properties have big yards and big setbacks. So like my home, for example, would have a 25-foot setback. So it would literally be 25 feet plus another 30 feet for an RA2, 55 feet from wall to wall from my house to an apartment. Whereas here, there'd be, for the one on the corner, for example, a 30-foot required buffer yard. And then I did measure the measurement I could do. It's not perfect, but about 85 feet is what I got from back property line to house. So you're talking like 115 feet. And then when you're talking about houses across Hanson Place, you'd have the right-of-way itself, which looks like it's about platted about 70 feet, and then the homes are back pretty significantly. So it's not quite the same. You have quite a bit of separation, but again, you do have a 3-story that's kind of right in there. But on the other hand, I'm not sure with all of the land that they're going to lose with drainage and everything else, how they make things pencil out. So I could see it going either way. So thanks.
Other discussion on this, council? Counselor Cole.
So I'm definitely not opposed to apartment buildings, but I am opposed to a 3-story going between 2 single-family homes. I move to amend the ordinance by striking the words, quote, "and the RA2 apartment residential moderate density," and the S from districts wherever they appear in the ordinance, and by amending the exhibit to reflect only RA1 in the areas to be rezoned.
All right, do we have a second for that?
Second, Star.
Okay, motion by Cole, seconded by Starr. Any comments you want to make on that, Counselor Cole? Okay, discussion on that amendment?
I do, Mr.
Counselor Starr?
The only issue with this is that if we change this now, the developer, whoever ends up purchasing this property and comes back, is probably going to come back and ask us to change it back to maximize their return on their investment. So, I mean, we may be a short-term win that kicks the discussion down the road. That's my problem here. It's kind of a chicken or egg thing on the whole thing. Why not leave it ag until you have a real plan so that you can go to the neighbors and tell them exactly what's going on? This changing it, giving us a proposed plan, us making changes, have the debate, just puts us down the road that, it could potentially not come back to us at all, and we take a look at what it is going to be. Or second of all, it just leaves the neighbors feeling good tonight until later on. So I'm still going to support this amendment because I think the 2-story makes sense here, but I think when it's ready to develop, we'll be voting on this again.
All right, any other discussion on this? Counselor Sale?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And though I appreciate the sentiment to move it all to RA1, I do think this zoning is appropriate. And those of us who have been on the council for a while know that just approving the zoning and we see a preliminary plan, it's not necessarily what's going to end up there. And we'd all look to try and get a fix to that. But when I look at the zoning and what Shape Places have done, I think that the people in planning and zoning have done the right thing to put this in by the landowner moving to RA1 on the north end of that property. I think he's made a concession to the neighbors on that point. We all struggle with these kind of zonings as we go on. And the longer you serve on the council, they just start to build up and build up and build up. And pretty soon you've made everybody mad, and maybe isn't that why we're all here? But I think I'm not gonna support the amendment, even though I'm very sympathetic to the cause.
All right, other discussion here? All right, let's vote on the amendment, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
No.
McCoris,
No.
Nitzert,
No.
Selberg,
No.
Sale,
No.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranko.
No. All right, that fails 6-2, so we're back to the main motion. Discussion on the main motion.
Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Starr.
First of all, I want to say this is a success by deferring this for 2 weeks. We could have had this discussion between first reading and second reading, but we got the discussion in. I'm glad that the developer did what we asked by meeting with the neighbors. You don't always get what you want, but I think the neighborhood understands the plan a lot better. I think having a cordial conversation of what was trying to, I keep saying developer, and I apologize, there is no developer as part of this. There's a landowner who's trying to sell their property, according to the testimony earlier. But this is what's supposed to happen between first and second reading. This is what's supposed to happen before first reading, but getting the neighborhood on board to truly understand rather than misconceptions and ideas that they didn't understand exactly what was going on. So I guess more than anything, I want to applaud the system that it worked by taking a couple of weeks. We don't always have to rush things through. Again, people are going to leave unhappy with what we're doing. I agree with Councilor Sale. That's why I think we're here. We build these up of tough things when we're trying to look at a brownfield in the middle of the city. balancing property rights. One speaker talked about earlier was exactly right. Do I have the right with my property to develop the way I want? Do I need to follow shape places with what we're trying to do within the city? It's a pretty tough concept when you have people who planned on living their lives in the country, and now the city's approaching, and the city's been coming for quite a while. So been able to see that part of it. So again, I believe I'm going to support this. It makes sense as the city continues to grow, and we're short the housing that we need. So without that, I'm not sure how else to fall behind that. But I'm glad this process worked.
All right, further discussion here. Counselor Selberg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you to all the folks here in the neighborhood that have been here for the last few meetings. Hopefully the couple of weeks helped. It's just tough. I probably would reiterate exactly what was said by Councilor Sale and Starr as far as, and the thing is we see more and more of these all the time, and it'll continue to get more and more of these as this town continues to explode in every which direction. So it's hard to make everybody happy, at least whatever. You just hope that the time has been taken and concessions have been made and meetings have been had. It seems like that part has been done. So, but again, I guess I would just say to the folks that showed up and put their time in, I appreciate it. I appreciate those of you who I heard from personally and encouraged me to take a look at everything out there, and I tried my best to do so. So, thank you.
All right, any other discussion here? All right, seeing none, let's take a vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
No.
Baranco,
Yes.
correction, sorry, Jensen,
Yes.
Mercouris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 7-1. Next item, please.
Item 53, new 2022 retail liquor license for Mertens and Stotero LLC, 309 South Bonson Avenue. Item 54, new 2022 retail liquor license for Initiative Investments LLC, 1105 North Minnesota Avenue. Item 55, new 2022 retail liquor license for Vikesh Patel, 2712 South Ellis Road. Item 56, new 2022 retail liquor license for Vikesh Patel, 4109 West 57th Street. Item 57, new 2022 retail liquor license for Maple Incorporated, 4110 West Maple Street, Suite 102. Item 58, new 2022 retail liquor license for Anusia LLC, 2409 West Russell Street. Item 59, new 2022 retail liquor license for P5 Investments, 5013 North Annika Avenue. Item 60, new 2022 package liquor license for ASAVP LLC, 1720 North Louise Avenue. Item 61, new 2022 retail package liquor license for P5 Investments, 5017 North Annika Avenue. Item 62, new 2022 package liquor license for P5 Investments, 5021 North Annika Avenue, Suite 101. Item 63, new 2022 package liquor license for Maple Tree Incorporated, 4110 West Maple Street, Suite 105. Item 64, new 2022 package liquor license for Marion Investments LLC, 5100 North Marion Road. Item 65, new 2022 package liquor license for Marion Investments LLC, 5201 North Annika Drive. Item 66, new 2022 package liquor license for Marion Investments LLC, 5021 West 62nd Street North. Item 67, new 2022 package liquor license for Vikesh Patel, 3505 West 49th Street. Item 68, new 2022 package liquor license for Arcia Incorporated, 1605 West Burnside Street. Item 69, new 2022 package liquor license for Vikesh Patel, 2704 South Ellis Road, Suite 103. Item 70, new 2022 package liquor license for Vikesh Patel, 4105 West 57th Street. Item 71, new 2022 package liquor license for Stern Oil Company Incorporated, 3501 West 49th Street. Item 72, new 2022 retail wine license and 2022-23 retail malt beverage license for Aldi Incorporated, 4201 West 61st Street North. Item 73, new 2022-23 retail malt beverage license for Jessica's Restaurant LLC, 3500 South Louise Avenue. And item 74, transfer of 2022 retail liquor license and 2022-23 retail malt beverage license, including video lottery terminals from B&D Group Investments, 3400 West 49th Street, to B&D Group Investments, 5520 West Success Street, Suite 100, effective November 15th, 2022.
Hi, Jamie.
Good evening, Jamie Palmer. I want my paper.
Hi, we'll get it.
As you can see, the bulk of these items are the new licenses that were allowed with the 2020 census numbers. Thank you. And they all kind of came due at the same time. So that's the bulk of the items. Some of the applicants are here if you have questions for them. Otherwise, I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone from the public like to speak on any of these items here? All right, council, do you have any questions for Jamie on any of these?
Move approval.
Second, Cole.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Cole. Discussion there, council? All right, let's vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
McCoris.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item.
Item 75, second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations. Sponsors the mayor.
Evening, Sean.
Good evening. Sean Pritchett again, Director of Finance. This is second reading on an appropriations ordinance. We went through it in pretty good detail last week. Main ones are the $2 million that's related to the additional platting fees received that'll be appropriated for arterial street improvements. There's several for fire and parks and recreation dealing with cost escalation, both with fuel as well as some storm damages, and then police vehicle and then the additional funds for the lodging tax and the bid tax that's flowing through to Experience Sioux Falls, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on this.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Anyone from the public here to speak on 75? Any questions for Sean, council?
Move approval.
Second, Cole.
Motion by Selberg, seconded by, I'll give that to Councilor Cole. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on it, please.
Council members Cole.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
McCoris.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes.
All right, passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Next item is item 84, which was moved by amendment. A resolution amending the 2022-2026 capital program. Sponsors the mayor.
So we have a capital program resolution. This accompanies the appropriation. So two items are duplicated between the two. The $2 million appropriation for the arterial street improvements from the additional platting fees, as well as the police vehicle, are now amended into the capital program. There's also three other items on here. Two of them, one is related to parks and recreation, medical equipment for the zoo. No additional appropriation funded from savings from other items. Entertainment venues, adding a scissor lift for $18,000, funded by removal of the scrubber item that was in the OSEP program. And then finally, the largest item here is the water reclamation improvement program, or for the project. It's for $41.9 million. We had received a grant from in ARPA funding from the Department of Agricultural and Natural Resources. At the time that was received, we didn't amend the capital program for the additional grant funding that we had received, so this is kind of a cleanup item for that.
All right,
Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone from the public here to speak on item 84? Council, you have questions on this item? Councilor Starr?
Yes, I guess the grant for the ARPA grant for the wastewater treatment, is that an additional, or is that covering existing expenditure in the overall project budget?
Do you want to speak to that, Andy or Shannon?
Andy Berg, Public Works. Yeah, that's not additional dollars funded towards the project. That's covering what was approved in March towards the wastewater plant improvements.
Which was an expansion in when we did it then.
It's an expansion of the plant, yes.
Right.
And then those funds were offsetting basically some of the costs associated with that plant expansion.
Perfect.
Yep.
That's good.
Other questions tonight on this? All right, look for a motion.
Move approval, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Nitzert.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Nitzert. Discussion on the motion? All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Cole.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
McCoris.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
Star.
Yes.
Baranko.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Next item is item 85, also moved by amendment. A resolution creating tax incremental district number 26, City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0. Private applicant Nielsen Development LLC, Kelly Nielsen.
Jeff.
Good evening, Council. Jeff Eckhoff, Planning and Development Services. With us tonight, I'm going to do a few introductory remarks, and then Dustin Powers will take you through the mechanics of the TIF as he did last week. Thank you, Councilor Jensen, for the amendment to put these three items together. As you know from past experience, they certainly are linked. We also have Brendan Riley, who is our outside counsel in the audience tonight, if you have questions for the legal part of it. And then Jeff Nelson, who is the chair of the AHAB board, is also here with us tonight too. So if questions come up, I think he'll have some comments at public comment time as well. So just kind of want to take you back a little bit and talk about this concept of the tax increment financing for housing and for accessible housing. And it's certainly been a long journey and a long road to get us here. You saw this slide back, I believe, in an information meeting back a year ago almost, where underneath the incentives we talked about developing a TIF program for home ownership. And so we've been talking about that for some time. On January 4th, we had another informational meeting with you where we had talked about some of the recommendations that came out of AHAB. And one of the things we talked about was the home ownership TIF and some of the criteria around that, and there would be a minimum of 30 units, 75%, or a third of them would be at 75%, a third of them at 100%. We talked about the different covenants that we put on as far as restrictions, that type of thing. As we worked, and the staff worked with Kelly Nielsen to bring this first TIF forward to you, we had some individual meetings with council members on the 15th and 19th of August, where we kind of went through the details of the TIF, talked about some of them, answered some of those questions. And we had an informational meeting on the TIF on September 6th with this body, and of course we had first reading last week. Just some additional background. Back in 2021, when kind of all this discussion and some of the housing things rose to the forefront of everybody's discussion, Councilor Jensen, Councilor Erickson were leaders in trying to get that conversation going within the community. They had a series of meetings. It started with a meeting at the Country Club with the Realtors Association. They had a couple public meetings. They met with home builders. The chamber had a session. The Realtors had a session. From those conversations, as well as participation in the statewide housing task force that the legislature put out in summer 2021, we convened as the Accessible Housing Board 2 work sessions. Those work sessions had, of course, Councilor Selberg was there as your representative on the AHAB board. Councilor McCorris was there in his previous role, not as a councilor. We had the helpline, we had Thrive, we had the Development Foundation, the Chamber participate, our housing partners, the county, Southeast Development Foundation, Affordable Housing Solutions, and Sioux Falls Housing. And we had bankers, mortgage officers, and developers there, particularly Kelly Nielsen and Clint Ackerman participated to take input to get us where we were as we talked to you about what this Accessible Housing Board, what AHAB did as far as putting guardrails or putting definitely or certainly some direction to what they want us to do. It's really talked about the structure, which Dustin will get into, but really what I want to talk to you about, there were 3 overarching principles that we came up with AHAB. First of all, we are targeting this towards those that are ready for home ownership, but have struggles getting there because of price or because of the cost of the home, as you know, which has been doing nothing but escalating, especially in this last year. The second thing is we wanted to make sure that whatever we came up with worked in the market, right? We wanted the market, a private sector approach to this. Lots of public dollars, lots of HUD dollars, federal dollars, city dollars go towards housing. In the next slide, we'll talk about where those dollars go and where they're used most appropriately. And the last thing was an overarching principle is we want to promote integrated neighborhoods. So we didn't want just this development over here to be all by itself where all the small houses were and then all the big houses were over here. We wanted integrated neighborhoods. As our housing friend Joan Franken from Costello will tell you, there's no such thing as a good location for affordable housing. There's only just good locations for housing, meaning affordable housing, integrated housing should be wherever it is within the city. It shouldn't be limited to a certain area. This slide, I know some of you have seen if you were at the last homeless task force. Logan Penfield, our housing development director, created this slide and presented it at that meeting. I think it does an excellent job of showing where our funds go and the different buckets, if you will, and the different AMI levels that we serve with the funding that we get both from HUD and from the city. On that 0 to 30%, the most very difficult to house, Of course, we support Bishop Dudley, we support the Heartland House, which are programs in transitional, trying to get people out of homelessness into a house situation. When you look at 30 to 60%, we work a lot with the tax credit apartments. Through the police department, we provide funding to Children's Inn. Bright Futures is also a case management program through ICAP that we help support. But we really try to put those dollars into the tax credit programs that are out there that Costello, Lloyd, and others have done through the years. As you know, that amount of tax credits has decreased at the state level. It's very difficult to get those projects, and Sioux Falls is lucky to get 1 to 2 projects a year, and those have decreased in size, and now this coming year we do not even have one on the books. As you go to 60-80, then you do some of the programs. Everything at 80% is a lot of our HUD programs. ARPA dollars used for the Neighborhood Safety Grant Program with the sidewalks and home repair, single-family rehab, neighborhood revitalization, and mobile home repair. Those are programs that at that 80% they have to qualify. Most of that is federal money through HUD or money tied to our federal dollars. Now we move on to the 80% and above because we knew, and the task and the challenge that we heard from across the city was, what do you do for workforce housing? What do you do for accessible housing? What do you do for those folks that are ready for home ownership, are ready to move up, but they can't because of the barriers of cost? They don't qualify for federal assistance because they're just above the 80%, but yet they struggle financially. We have a need, we have jobs coming in town, help us create workforce housing. So this was one of the solutions we came up with. There's a couple programs, Counselor Sales, Public Safety Down Payment Assistance Program that he championed that we're using. We're working with the Southeast Development Foundation as they move homes and create neighborhoods, as well as the Development Foundation, which is a new venture for us. But this accessible or affordable housing TIF is the first venture that we took into that. And so the question comes up, you know, why use a TIF? Why go down that road? And the answer, if you remember from the informational session when I talked to you, is we are looking for a private sector partner. We're looking for a private sector solution. The thing about it is it's sustainable. It's repeatable. It does not take an appropriation from tax dollars every year. Yes, it diverts tax dollars temporarily, but it creates a private sector solution that's sustainable and scalable. Right? They can do more we believe we can do more working in partnership with the developers than we can do on our own just by simply throwing money at a project. One of the things that I had conversations across the state with legislators throughout the summer study and different folks around the community and bankers and folks that we talked to about what we were trying to do is the number one thing I kept hearing from a lot of the people, particularly in the banking community, is don't screw up the market. Right? Try to make your programs compatible, make them work within the private sector of the market, work with your developers. Don't mess up the market. And when the city gets involved and when government gets involved and you put your thumb on the scale for something, you better hope you put it on the right place with the right pressure. Because you put too much on and you can mess things up, and then you do not have those characteristics of sustainability and long-term scalability that we're looking for. So that's kind of where we are. There's discussions. One of the things I think that's worthy of talking about is if you saw the Kello story that was done on this project, there was a tremendous quote right at the end of the story from Kelly. I just copied it out of the website, and it just said, Kelly told this to Kello. We didn't do this TIF application design just for me and for this one development. It's structured that hopefully other developers will grab onto the idea and try to add in some of this type of housing in their developments. With that, I'm going to ask Dustin Powers to come up and take you through the mechanics of the TIF, and of course will be available for questions as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Good evening, Dustin.
Evening, Council, Mayor. Dustin Powers, Planning and Development Services. So wanted to just re-hit a few of the items we went through in first reading last week. First, just being the project details, just to remind everyone what we're talking about here. This is 65 single-family homes that will be developed on 39 single-family lots and 26 twin homes on 13 twin home lots. All of the homes within the district would be priced below the first-time homebuyer price, which is established by the South Dakota Development Authority, which is currently $340,000. When we look at the project details, there are 3 different unit types that are within this 65 unit housing development. The first being a 978 square foot single family home, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. Those will be priced at or below $232,000. Unit type B is a 1,200 square foot product, 3-bedroom, 2 bath. Again, slab on grade, single family construction. Those will be priced at or below $308,000. And then the third unit type C is our twin home concept, which is a little over 1,000 square foot twin home, 2-bedroom, 2 bathrooms, 2-stall garage, but does have an unfinished lower level that could be finished out with an additional 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Those will be priced at $323,000 or below. So when we look at unit type A, that's 68% of the first-time homebuyer pricing. Unit type B is 90% of the first-time homebuyer price limit. And then unit C is 95% of the first-time homebuyer price limit. This is just a artist rendering of, again, the neighborhood and what we would see out there. This is on the east side of the development looking towards the west. So the homes directly in the front of the image are those slab-on-grade unit types A and B. And then in the background, you can see the twin home concepts that borders the TIF district and borders the adjacent neighborhood as well. So again, when we're considering TIF, there are 3 items that are on tonight's agenda. Item 85 is a resolution creating the district and setting the district boundaries. Item 86 is a project plan for that details all of the project details of this. And then item 76 is the development agreement. So I'll go through each one of those quickly. The proposed tax increment district, this is 9.7 acres in the northeast part of town, just north of Madison Street and east of Veterans Parkway. It currently only generates a few $100s as agricultural land. The TIF request is for $2.14 million requested to support the site work, roads, infrastructure, utilities. Ultimately, once the 65 homes are completed, we're projecting $300,000 of increment and taxes being collected for this 9.7 acres. When we look at creating a TIF district, we look at codified law. The city must pass a resolution that states that not less than 25% by area of real property within the district is blighted, or not less than 50% by area of real property within the district will stimulate and develop the general economic welfare and prosperity of the state through the industrial, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, natural resources. The resolution must also prove that the improvement of the area will significantly enhance the value of substantially all of the property within the district. So when we look at those 2 items, first is the economic welfare of the state. The intent of this project is to create new accessible housing ownership opportunities to support the city's continued efforts in growing the economy of Sioux Falls, which supports ultimately the general economic welfare and prosperity of our state. More accessible housing units in Sioux Falls supports the retention of jobs, as well as the creation of new jobs and growth for our city, which again promotes the growth of the state. When we also look at the findings of whether or not enhanced value is occurring within this district, we can clearly state that by adding these 65 homes within the district, we are substantially enhancing that value of all of that property within the district. The second item is the project plan. There are a number of elements that are addressed within the project plan. It goes through information regarding the public works and improvements of the district, which will be those infrastructure improvements to support the accessible housing development. It talks about an economic feasibility study, which ultimately looks at the increment that's being collected and whether or not it is enough to pay down the requested TIF, which we've detailed that it does. The detailed estimated project cost of the entire project, which would be that $20 million. The impact on the taxing entities, so we shared what that would be during the TIF. So obviously the increment collected would be distributed through the TIF, but following the dissolution of the TIF, following the repayment, we would see those taxes being distributed to the taxing entities. And ultimately, this is a developer-funded TIF, so Kelly and Nielsen Development is taking on all of the risk associated with financing this project and completing the project improvements. There's a number of other elements. We look at the existing uses and conditions of the property. We look at the proposed uses of the property. A few weeks ago, you actually had a zoning change come in front of you to actually provide and allow for a little bit higher density within the single-family housing district that we're proposing. And ultimately, there's no changes to our comprehensive plan here, and there's no relocations of any individuals in this area, as it's just ag land today. The third item on the agenda is the TIF development agreement. This is item 76. Again, as I mentioned, this is a developer-funded TIF, so Nielsen Development is taking the risk to finance this and ultimately get the payback through the TIF. The TIF request is for $2.14 million plus the cost of financing up to 5.2%. Any requested reimbursement over $1.84 million, we would need to have some additional financial information provided to substantiate that request. It's just kind of a stopgate for us to continue to review this as we move forward. When we look at the requirements of the developer within the development agreement, again, we're asking Nielsen Development to build all of these homes by May 1st of 2028. The sales prices are restricted to those 3 sale prices that I had on the previous slide. So ultimately, he's not allowed to increase the prices of this, which is again one of the risks that is being taken on as part of this, because these homes are going to be developed not in 1 year, but over a 4 to 5 year period. And so locking those in for that amount of period of time is really a great risk when you think about the cost of things going up during that period. And then lastly is recording the restrictive covenants. So this is attached to the development agreement. What these restrictive covenants are is during a 5-year period following the original purchase date, all of these homes will have to be sold at that original purchase price plus only a housing price index. So it kind of locks in that affordability for a short period of time, that 5-year window. It also says that it should be a primary residence and ultimately not rented is the 3 main restrictions in those covenants. So when we looked at all of these items, these project details again were presented to the Accessible Housing Advisory Board as well as the Planning Commission, and both of those have unanimously recommended approval of these items in front of you here tonight. With that, as Jeff said before, there's a number of us here that can answer any questions that you have moving forward. So.
All right, thanks, Dustin. Anyone from the public who would wish to speak on this item tonight, item 85? Good evening.
Hey, Hunter Berry, 5540 East Blarney Place. This development isn't actually too far away from me. This is probably like a 5-minute drive for me, so I've driven past the area several times already. Obviously, I fully support it. I think that, again, it goes back to the affordable housing issue that the city has and just having enough of it to accommodate the growth. I think it's important to build as much as possible and accommodate for that need. It's kind of a win-win for everybody, just based on what I've heard about it. There's a cap on the home prices. The TIF is a completely normal part of the process. It's just designed to fill that gap for any developmental costs. It's completely normal to do that. People get their affordable housing. The first-time home buyers are accommodated for. There's obviously no impeding on anybody. Like was said earlier, it's all agricultural land. The city gets more property tax revenue from this, a lot more actually, and it's just a win-win for everybody involved, and I say we move forward with it.
All right, thanks, Hunter. Anyone else here to speak on this? Come on up. Good evening, sir.
Mr. Mayor, councilors. My name is Jeff Nelson. I'm chair of the Accessible Housing Advisory Board, and you've heard everybody talk at this point in time about what we've been doing. Councilor Selberg is on the committee as well, and we're on the board as well. And we've spent a fair amount of time. In fact, when Jeff was telling all the meetings we'd been to, I was surprised that it had been that many. Some of you were at those, some of you have not been, but this has been vetted. And we've got the guardrails in place, and it's an exciting project. If you take a look on your screen, you'll see 65 properties that are available. A year ago today, we didn't have 65 properties existing on the market to buy in this town. This is This is a major impact for this community. And it's something that's exciting because a year ago, many of those houses were over $500,000 or $600,000. These are all for affordable housing. This is what's going to help people come here, buy a house, make sure that they have the availability to have a family, to have a job, and pay taxes. And again, it's very exciting. And then when we have developers who are ready to step up and take the risk on this, it's even a better situation. And Kelly has done a marvelous job. And it's not just Kelly. When he said on the Kello News that there was going to be, hopefully you'll be opening the door, Kelly, for several other developers who can see that this will work. And for the city of Sioux Falls, this is a major, major impact. Your approval on this issue, on this TIF, is imperative, and more importantly than that, you got 65 people that are going to benefit, and hopefully many, many more. Anyway, thank you.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Anyone else here to speak on this tonight? Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Brian Burge, running for District 16 Senate out of Beersford area. Glad we are making some progress.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor McCurris, go ahead.
I believe we have an introduction here of a candidate for office. I don't believe it's appropriate to use the public input time. Candidating for office would like a direction on that from the city attorney, if that's allowed.
Yeah, there is a restriction. That being said, if he's a declared candidate for office. Sir, is this related to your office?
Yes, it is, as this is affecting codified law that we are using, and it is taking tax dollars out of every citizen's pocket within the state to fund certain people within the Sioux Falls area. So anyone within the state has standing at this point. Also, it's South Dakota codified law underneath TIF. It does state that adequate time shall be given for the public to present on this, at which point I don't think it, last time I checked, Sioux Falls ordinance and procedure is subsequent to codified law.
Okay, so the concern with the rule is that this is really an FCC rule, but we have an executive order in the city that just prevents campaigning because this is broadcast using government dollars. We can't allow campaigning in that respect. And so I get we're splitting some hairs here. I just want to confirm this is not a campaign position, or I'm concerned with your statement that you said it may be.
So as far as I'm concerned, take it with or not, I'm not running. Just want to give you who I am and where I'm from. My concern is I pay tax and I pay property tax and I pay into a school, as does everyone else in the state. And to me, those people need a voice when a particular government body is getting ready to pull dollars out of their pocket.
I think we'll move ahead. We'll allow you to testify, but I think the point is when you come to the dais and announcing you're a candidate, it instantly clouds your remarks as being campaign driven. And that's where we have a challenge where we can't allow active people in an active campaign. So I guess the question is, are you a declared candidate? Are you on the ballot in 3 weeks?
Yes, I am on the ballot in 3 weeks.
Got it.
Thank you for the clarity on it.
Okay. So I think with that, we can't allow you to testify because you declared that you are in fact a candidate. You're on the ballot. So thank you for your time tonight.
Okay. Thank you guys for breaking law.
Anyone else to comment on this tonight? All right, seeing no other public input, Council, let's move to questions for any of our staff here. Councilor Neitzer.
I do have questions, but you're the chair, but I don't agree with that interpretation. So can you bring up the slide about SD, about the required findings for the TIF? It's SDCL 1198. Okay, so I've spent the weekend looking at state law, and I'm all for housing. That's not an issue. But I've been struggling with this particular issue, and I've talked to your counsel, your outside counsel, who's been helpful, and we talked about this as well. So here's where I'm struggling. The second part, and we have to make these findings, otherwise you can't award a TIF. Doesn't matter whether it's housing or what it's for. The second part, I can agree with that. The improvement is likely to significantly enhance the value of substantially all other real property in the district. That's, you know, we could quibble about the word substantially and significantly, but that's a pretty easy one. The first part, So it's a two-part test. It can be either one of those. Which one of those would you assert is satisfied by this TIF?
Well, the resolution that's brought forward to you as item 85, it states that we're meeting that, we're determining that we're meeting 50%, not less than 50% of the area of real property within the district will stimulate and develop the general economic welfare and prosperity of the state.
And as I mentioned before, and you have it on the screen here, but you left out the clause, through the promotion and advancement of industrial, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, or natural resources development. So how do you square that with a housing development, that this stimulates the general economic welfare and prosperity of the state through the promotion and advancement of industrial, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, and natural resource development? That's where I'm hung up.
Yep, and I'll have Brendan come up and provide you our outside legal opinion of this as well. But when we look at this, by providing accessible housing or additional housing units to the city of Sioux Falls, we're promoting growth in all of those areas listed up there that you just mentioned. So without providing additional housing to our city, we cannot promote growth of the economic welfare of the state by stagnantly not growing. We're promoting the retention of jobs and the growth of new jobs and businesses of our community by providing additional housing units to the city that are meeting that workforce housing criteria that Jeff went through in that 80% and 110% of AMI. So I'll turn it over to Brendan. I know he's got some more legal expertise on that.
Great, thank you.
Brandon, good evening.
Thank you, Council. Brendan Riley, 206 West 14th Street. And yeah, just to clarify a few things, or maybe put your focus on some things, as we're looking at that statute 1198, when I look at this, focus on the economic development piece being the promotion and advancement of, and then that list. It doesn't say the development of those particular properties. And when I get to look at this, Councilor Neitzer brought this up last week, so we had a chance to look at this. When you dig further into that, this statute and some others in this section for TIF districts was greatly expanded in 2011 by adding this language, this economic welfare language, and it allowed for grants. So you may remember people tie this to blight usually. A lot of our earlier TIFs in the city were in the downtown area, relieving blight. Not necessarily the case anymore. 2011 expanded these statutes and gave you, as we've recognized, great discretion here on what to do. But when you look at this, and there's not a ton of guidance beyond those, because there just hasn't been a lot of cases that have been decided on TIFs. Not lots of people understand it, but there hasn't been a lot of case law. But when you look at our guidance throughout the state, I think it helps get us to where you want to be, and that is, are we following these statutes? Is this promoting and advancing economic development and the prosperity and welfare of the state? Our State Department of Revenue, in a tax fact handout, sorry, I don't have any fancy screens, but there's, they put these out every once in a while. Our State Department of Revenue just recently in July 2022 gave some guidance, a little brochure on tax increment financing. In that, it has a TIF classification types. One of them is affordable housing, and it says example projects are housing development infrastructure improvements, housing development, and workforce housing. I mean, that's pretty much exactly what we have here. This is for infrastructure and development of housing. Also, again, as a little more guidance on where this language came from or interpreting it, our state, South Dakota legislature, the Legislative Research Council, that's in charge of our statutes and ordinances and explanations, in 2017 issued a memorandum that goes directly to this fact under an economic development TIF district. It says the definition of an economic development TIF district is broad enough that most projects could reasonably be considered economic development. you know, one of the questions that got brought up last week. It goes on to make the connection that housing is included as economic development. Again, as the promotion and advancement of industrial commercial manufacturing. Finally, just to kind of bring it all together, and I don't know that this is a concern anymore, but one of the questions raised last week is this even lawful? Is it proper to bring a TIF for a housing development? And the answer is yes. Our restrictions in the statutes that are referenced in some other statutes are that it cannot be used, TIF dollars can't be used for residential structures. In this case, we've made it abundantly clear that these TIF dollars, if approved under the development agreement, can be used for the infrastructure, but not for structures. And again, and our AG, so our South Dakota AG's office has an AG opinion from 2008 that also reiterates that fact. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Counselor Neitzer, go ahead.
Thanks. Just a couple quick follow-ups. First of all, thank you for giving me the two documents that you referenced. The first being the tax increment financing memorandum from the LRC. So you talked about economic development TIFs, but this wouldn't it be correct that this is not an economic development TIF? This is affordable housing TIF?
I think those are just labels to put on it. Like, there's no statutes that say you have certain criteria if this
Correct.
is economic development or a different set of statutes if it's housing development. I think they're putting it into buckets. I'd say it's both. I mean, it's a TIF that's being supported, the criteria are being met through economic development. What I simply make the connection with is we don't have a ton of guidance. We don't have case law. A lot of states have case law that determine what's proper, what's not. Here, what we have for guidance is some of our regulators that make these connections. And I think our Department of Revenue, that's our tax regulator, is making the connection that affordable housing is proper use of TIF money.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor
I have a question. Director Eckhoff, can I ask you a question, please? We're going to go back in the slide here. Can you go back to the benefit or to the dollars that will be in the future that we'll be getting? Can't remember where it was. Yeah, so after this project is complete and this TIF is paid off, so we'll be having $2.14 million come on the tax rolls and no less than.
Counselor Starr?
Yes. Councilor Jensen just interrupted Councilor Neitzer when he was in the middle of his point. He hadn't stopped, he hadn't rescinded the floor at this point.
I heard the end of a question and another counselor asked for the floor. So when we're done, we'll go back to Counselor Neitzer.
So as part of that point of order, you're going to allow people to interrupt, or if they pause for a moment while they're going through their thought process, you're going to recognize them as part of that.
We'll go back to Counselor Neitzer when Counselor Jensen is finished with his question.
So rude.
That's your opinion. Go ahead, Counselor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Director, so as we look at that, and that's all for site work, roads, infrastructure, utilities, professional services and fees, and then that will come back on the tax rolls in approximately 20-ish years, that dollar amount going forward.
So when the TIF is completed and the property all comes back on the tax rolls, it's estimated to be about $300,000 a year of property tax being paid.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And that goes towards all of the, continues to increase our tax base for
Correct.
school, for city, for county, so it's a great economic development tool that we get to utilize during that time.
Yeah, those taxes will be returned to based on the mill levies, correct?
Great, thank you. It was just a
Okay,
good question.
Counselor
To
Neitzer,
segue in.
apologize if you felt cut off there. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Brendan, so just jumping back, trying to recollect my train of thought. So, and again, I love the idea of this. I'm just struggling philosophically with whether or not this fits the definition that you can grant for a TIF. So you did talk about economic development. It talks about housing. It does, of course, go on to talk about commercial and says that for commercial housing purposes, this certainly isn't commercial housing. So, I guess I would maybe quibble a little bit with potentially referencing that economic development. I guess it isn't a legal question, but I just struggle with, if I call housing economic development, what would I not call economic development? Now, I would say that the governing body, and we talked about this, has wide latitude, and that's why it's incumbent on every governing body to be, we have to essentially have our own guardrails. And I think we've done a good job of that in Sioux Falls over the years. I mean, some cities may abuse TIF, but, you know, so I guess the question is, yeah, I guess I'm not sure whether or not I would call it economic development, but I guess the governing body decides whether it is or not.
Yeah, if I'm following, that is the reality. The statutes were revised to give you broad discretion here. And to be honest, I tried, before talking to you and just going through this, I tried to figure out what wouldn't meet the criteria. And I really struggled to determine what doesn't meet the criteria. Now, that doesn't mean you have to approve all of this, but at the same time, when you talk about wide discretion, and you said our city staff does a nice job of vetting these, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but I thought it was interesting, so I'll share with you. At my office today, we made some calls, and the city of Rapid City has approved 71 TIF districts. Aberdeen has approved 38 TIF districts. Mitchell has approved 25 districts. And the city of Sioux Falls so far has approved 25 TIF districts in that time. So clearly our city staff is very selective into getting to this point. And, but then they bring it to you and you do get to use your discretion on whether this fits the criteria. I'm here to tell you from my position as outside counsel for the city, I signed off on this that I believe our resolution meets the statutory requirements under the economic development portion of that section 11.9.8, as well as if you look at it 11.9.15 when it talks about the definition of project costs, it gives very wide latitude, and this will be my last piece to not bore you with. I have a book here, but that looks really old, so I'll just use paper to make it just a little old. Payments and grants made at the discretion of the governing body, which are found to be necessary or convenient to the creation of tax increment districts or the implementation of project plans or to stimulate and develop the general economic welfare and prosperity of the state. I mean, that's in the definition of project costs. So it's a very wide latitude here that you have. I'm just here to say that it's my opinion that this resolution does meet the statutory criteria.
And I would just conclude, so thank you for all that. I guess, again, it just comes back to, I guess for me, the challenge, and I guess, and I respect where anybody lands on this, the legislature in 2018, when they did the affordable housing, they didn't put the word affordable housing anywhere in 11.9. It was only in 13.13, which had to do with who makes up the local effort and the school taxes. They could have amended 11.9.8 to be more clear, but again, they do stay, will stimulate and develop the general economic welfare and prosperity through the promotion and advancement of industrial, commercial, manufacturing, agricultural, and natural resources. So I guess for me, if you argue that housing promotes that, I would challenge you to pick anything in the entire city that somebody could propose on any property, because it's greenfield, that you would not qualify for a TIF if you approve this. That's my challenge. I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just saying I struggle. So not as much as I want it. I want to follow the law, though.
All right, any other questions on this item? Councilor Bronco?
Just a quick question. My understanding of the law is quite similar to yours. I think the discretion is quite broad. But you mentioned a 2008 Attorney General's opinion that I don't know that I'm familiar with. What was the context in which that was explained?
The 2008 Attorney General opinion is purely on the use of TIF dollars for residential development. So
That seems like that would be very,
what's that?
that seems like that'd be very relevant to what we're talking about. If you could give me a little bit more of
Yes,
what was
yes.
decided. please.
The question posed was from the city attorney, or the Brown County State's Attorney, excuse me, for Aberdeen. And at the time, and this is even prior to the grant language, because this was 2008, the question posed was, can we use TIF dollars for a residential development? The opinion, and again, sorry for reading, but I'll just read. The opinion said, in my opinion, the Attorney General's opinion, the plain and unambiguous language of SDCL 11942. 11942 is the restriction that you can't use TIF funds for residential structures. SDCL 11942 only prohibits the use of tax increment districts from the construction of residences, and the statute is not applicable to the construction of infrastructure in a residential development. Secondly, just to bang the point home, the Attorney General says the original language of SDCL 11942 stated that tax incremental districts shall not be used for development of residential property. In 1985, the legislature passed Senate Bill 133, which is entitled An Act to Permit Use of Tax Incremental District for Development of Residential Property. The bill amended SDCL 11942 to its current language, which is limited to residential structures. So it got back to the point of exactly why our TIF development agreement right now says it has a bunch of costs and it's for infrastructure and the like, but it specifically restricts the developer from using it for residential structures.
Makes sense to me.
All right, thanks. Kind of moved into debate in the merits, which is fine. We should probably put a motion on the floor and then we can continue to ask questions if there is. But does someone want to make a motion on this?
Move approval, Sale.
Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Sale, seconded by Jensen. We'll move back in any discussion on this. Councilor Sale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to point to council's attention to TIF District 11, which was approved in 2011. I'm just going to read you one section. The development of commercial residential property which allows for the expansion of market rate housing, the secondary generation of sales taxes in the core, and expansion of the city's workforce, and is essential governmental purpose and stimulates further economic development, was passed by the City Council in 2011. I believe it's appropriate to add on to that today as we go forward. And I appreciate all the hard work that people have done for the past, well, almost 5 years that I've been on the council to find a way that the city could work with private developers to get to a place where we could have some housing that could be accessible and affordable. So I'd appreciate your support on this. We've done it before. We should do it again.
All right, thank you, Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have served on the Accessible Housing Board here. I suppose it's been 2 or 3 years, and I appreciate our chair being here tonight, Mr. Nelson, sharing his views, and he couldn't have said it better than probably the way I wanted to put it. You know, there's been a lot of smart folks in a lot of meetings for a long time, about, I don't know, at least a good year and a half, if not more than that, trying to find answers to the most pressing issue that's, if not the most pressing issue facing our city, and that's affordable housing. So lots of smart folks. I mean, like, again, goes back to some counselors who started some meetings last year. There's been, I don't know how many different kind of groups that have gotten together that I've sat in with or heard about and talked to. And how can we think outside the box? What are some different ways we can do things that we can make housing more affordable for people? And I can tell you, being in the housing business, it's been needed. As Mr. Nelson had said, it wasn't even just a year ago, you couldn't find 65 houses available in Sioux Falls. So this is going to give 65 families an opportunity. This is one of the programs that resulted from a lot of smart people talking. I really appreciate Mr. Nielsen's efforts. I loved his comment again that Director Eckhoff mentioned on Kello. And he has taken quite a risk here. He's stepping up in many ways and taking a lot on his shoulders, and basically in an approach to try to think outside the box and lead in this way for other programs like this, other developers like this, and other ways for us to come up with more ways for affordable housing for the city. So again, it comes down to me, it's pretty, I'd hate to say simple, but this one to me is kind of a no-brainer where This housing is going to be a way to build housing that'll be less expensive for the consumer. That was the goal. That's what this is going to do. I wholeheartedly support it, and I certainly appreciate all the people that have put in so much time and effort to try to come to some conclusions, and I think we'll find more as we go along, but for today, this is a pretty good one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Other discussion, Council? Counselor McCoris?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Director Eckhoff. Could you help us understand a little bit, how much fees from the city's perspective before a building is even built, one of these units is built, how many fees to the city versus plotting, building permits? What's the total cost that the contractor is going to have to pay to the city in this?
So let me grab my notes here. The planning fees, which cover the drainage and the arterial streets, is about a little over $7,900 an acre for residential, and planning fees are based on zoning classification, so whether it's a TIF or affordable or not. So it's about $7,900 an acre. And then the building permit fees are based on square footage. It's the same amount for every house. It's just the more square footage, the more the fee is. And so as far as fees to the city, that's kind of what they have up front. But obviously their costs come in land acquisition and design and engineering and all the stuff they have to do up front before they ever put a foundation in the ground.
Thank you. And then the follow-up question to last week that I thought is just a legitimate question that Councilor Starr asked was, in the long-term mapping of the city, where will the nearest park be to this? I don't see that as a project killer or a project keeper, but we as a council have decided that a half mile from each residence, we want to have a park, and I just want to keep that in front of us. I know that many of us have talked about the importance of that to neighborhoods, and so I just wanted to see, is that on the radar at all? I just think it's important to keep in front of us.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to let Dustin actually has those schools and parks for you.
Thank you.
We have an extra map here we put in the slideshow. So what you can see on the screen is proposed District TIF 26. The TIF we're talking about is the blue dot on the map. You can see two red dots. The first to the southeast is the existing Fred Assam Elementary. Currently, that does have a park associated with it with some minor improvements. There's green field and a playground there. And actually, in 2025, we have designed to expand that park out, and that's in the capital budget right now and for construction in 2026 to finish that out. That's about 1.5 miles away. When we look to the southwest, you can see the Wild Meadows Park site. This is a 4-acre site that the city's acquired for a future park, so that's about 1 mile away from the current site. And then when you look at the red dot to the northwest, which is about 1/2 mile from this site, that is the future Brandon Valley School. They're targeting either an elementary or middle school at that location, and the city is currently Parks Department is currently in discussion again with how we can partner with the school site to bring some of those assets to that area. So there's not anything locked in our CIP necessarily for that site, but that is the site that's being targeted right now to bring some more park amenities within the area of this TIF district.
Great. Thanks for doing that for us and getting us that information. Now, from my perspective, when I look at this, I am really supportive of this project. And for me, is it perfect legislation? No, it's not perfect. I've never seen perfect legislation. But what I'm looking for is something that's a repeatable process. I think that Director Eckhoff brought up here, and let's try something that is repeatable in the future to incentivize the creation of more housing units. I'm kind of a stickler when it comes to throwing out the term affordable. I don't see this as creating affordable housing units. We're focused on 80% to 110% AMI. That's accessible workforce housing. Do we need it? Absolutely. Should we make a public investment in it? Absolutely. Do we need affordable as well, 30% to 60%? Absolutely. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And so I'm really supportive of this project. I think we need to make this investment, and we need to look at other investment opportunities on the affordable side of the scale as well. Great job to the staff for bringing this forward. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Counselor. Other discussion on this, Council? All right, seeing none, let's vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
No.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-1. Next item, please.
Next item, item 86, also moved by amendment, a resolution approving the project plan for tax incremental district number 26, City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 8-0. Private applicant Nielsen Development LLC, Kelly Nielsen.
Dustin.
So this is just the second item on your vote tonight. This is the project plan related to TIF 26. So we're happy to answer any additional questions.
All right, thanks, sir. Anyone from the public here to speak on 86?
Sarah Broussard, Sioux Falls. I'm glad that Rich McCoy's hit on this because the city needs to understand what affordable housing and workforce housing is. And this is sure in the hell not affordable housing. This is not for your middle class people. This is for your upscale people. And when I say affordable housing, I'm gonna say then, when the comments were made that we want to spread affordable housing in every neighborhood, that's a lie. Because you see my temperature boiling because it's a lie. How many times did we throw affordable housing in Whittier and Cathedral and Pettigrew and dump it on us? How many times? How many times did CCOG dump their stuff into our neighborhoods? We still haven't revitalized those neighborhoods, have we? It's not affordable housing. We have affordable housing in Pettigrew. And when we did a walk audit, that affordable housing got deemed. We need 30 to 60% properties. And I know that the mayor's putting his head down in this, that, the other, but you know what? We have to be for your middle-class bill-drinking people and your wine-drinking people here. The core of the neighborhood is looking bad. And if it wouldn't be for me in Pettigrew, we would not be getting changes in Pettigrew. So Cathedral would agree with me, Whittier would agree with me, and I represent Pettigrew, that this is not affordable housing. We do need to spread affordable housing throughout the whole city, and not just in these areas of the city. We can't play politics here. My nose is brown, but it don't go in anybody's behinds. I represent 3,800 people in Pettigrew, and we're dumping affordable housing there, and we need to stop. I'm not going to get into the politicalness of these TIF, because how the law is, it's here nor there on a TIF. But we need to practice what we preach and say that we're going to spread workforce housing into every area and not affordable. Because if you would drop affordable housing in my area, that is taking away the middle class poor people and pushing them out the neighborhood and putting the middle class upper scale people in. And not everybody in Pettigrew and Whittier and Cathedral can afford affordable housing at $250,000 to $399,000. I don't think so. Let's get into reality. It's workforce housing. Now, the city has to use terms, because if you use wrong terms, then you have to use some legal terms. We need to build more projects out here. And I'm going to call it the projects. We need them out here. We need more projects out here. What we need out here, and I hope the developers are listening, 3-bedroom apartments, because people with families are coming in, and we do not have affordable housing or workforce housing for 3 bedrooms for people and their children. So we need to work on the city attorney's office here with workforce housing versus affordable housing here. This is not affordable housing.
All right, anyone else speak on this?
Yeah, I just wanted to tack on what Mr. Mercorius, is that
Good
how you
luck.
pronounce it? Okay, I'm sorry. You had mentioned that this plan definitely wasn't perfect. I agree, and I concede with some people that have spoken that say the price range isn't ideal for everybody. It's certainly not perfect in that regard. We definitely need housing even cheaper than that. There are people that really, again, struggle here in the city even. So it's not perfect, but it's definitely a good start, I would argue. This conversation and then the planning and the adjustment toward more affordable housing has to start somewhere. And I think this is a pretty good start to that, considering, again, the percentages compared to the price ranges and everything. And as I've stated before, we need the development. It needs to start somewhere with something. It's not the most ideal proposal in the entire world, but it's definitely a start to a lot of things that could happen in the city. Some people may not know this. I don't know if everybody remembers me. I'm originally from California. The pricing there is absolutely out of control. It's bleeding into neighboring states like Nevada and Arizona. I know the median price in California is about $650,000. So first-time home buyers are effectively priced out of that market. I don't want to go as far as to say that same thing could happen here in the city, but the city continues to grow, and it's definitely not impossible or out of the realm of possibility that something like that could happen. So, my whole thing is let's get ahead of it. Is this perfect? Absolutely not. We definitely need more options for people who are a lot less fortunate than this, but at the same time, this conversation and the planning needs to start somewhere, and this is a pretty good start to that. So I would recommend that we move forward with it.
All right, anyone else here to speak on this tonight? All right, council, questions on this one? Look for a motion.
Move approval, Sale.
Second.
Motion by Sale, second by McCoris. Any discussion there? Let's vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
No.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, passes 7-1. Next item.
Next item is item 76, a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, establishing the tax increment revenues to be collected and authorizing the payment of tax increment revenues to Nielsen Development LLC in accordance with the development agreement for tax incremental district number 26, City of Sioux Falls. Sponsor is the mayor.
Dustin.
This is just the development agreement that outlines all the details that were previously presented. Again, we're here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one? All right, council, any questions for Dustin here? All right, I'll take a motion on this.
Move approval?
Second call.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Councilor Cole. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Nitzert.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that obviously I'm going it alone on all of these, and that's totally fine. But again, no statement about the worthiness of the project or that I'm against affordable housing or accessible housing, but it's just a philosophical issue of trying to figure out how I can, if I can get there and if I could justify this, can I, does it render some of the terminology meaningless? And figuring that the plain language means what it says to me, but I honor what other people, their interpretation. So just want to make that clear. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? All right, let's vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
No.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
That passes 7-1. Next item, please.
Next item, item 77, first reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 600 North La Mesa Drive from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District, the RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density District, number 17016-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Sponsor is the mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening again, Council. Kristen Bennett, City Planning and Development Services Office. This project is located at 600 North La Mesa Avenue. A little bit more descriptive is at La Mesa and West 5th Street. The size of the property is approximately 1.05 acres, with the purpose being to maintain an existing drainage pond that exists on the north portion and to allow the construction of a 5-unit townhome building on the south portion.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Council, or excuse me, first, anyone from the public here to speak on 77? All right, council, you have any questions for Kristen on this one?
Move approval?
Second, Jensen.
Motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen. Discussion on that motion. All right, let's take a vote, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0, or excuse me, 8-0. Next item, please.
Next item, item 78, first reading an ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 7505 South Minnesota Avenue from the AG Agriculture District to the C3 Commercial Community District, number 17072-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the city of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Private applicant, Willitson Lund Engineering, Eric Willitson.
This property is located at 7505 South Minnesota Avenue. The property is about 2.36 acres. The purpose will be to prepare the site for commercial development along South Minnesota Avenue in the future.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Anyone from the public here to speak on this one tonight? Any questions here, council? All right, look for a motion, please.
So moved.
Second, Nitzert.
All right, motion by Bronco, seconded by Nitzert. Discussion there. All right, let's take a vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that one passes 8-0. Next item.
Item 79, first reading an ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 1320 and 1324 East Pearl Street from the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District to the RT2 Townhome Residential Traditional District, number 17129-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the city of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Sponsors the mayor.
This is located at 1320 and 1324 East Pearl Street. Size of the lot is about 0.14 acres. The purpose of this rezoning is to match the correct zoning with the current use of the property, which is as a 2-unit house.
All right, anyone from the public here to speak on 79? Any questions on this one, council? All right,
Move approval?
Second, Cole.
motion by Selberg, seconded by Cole. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that one, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that one's going to pass 8-0. Next item, please.
Item 80, first reading an ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 514 and 516 North Nesmith Avenue from the RT1 Single Family Residential Traditional District to the RT2 Townhome Residential Traditional District, number 17148-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the city of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0. Recommendation is to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Private applicant Phil Pudens.
This project is located at 514 and 516 North Nesmith Avenue. The size again is 0.14 acres. And again, the purpose of this rezoning is to match the correct zoning with the current use of the property as a 2-unit house.
All right, thanks, Kristen. Anyone from the public here to speak on 80? Question on this one, council? Take a motion.
Move to set the second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Nitzert.
Second, Cole.
All right, motion by Nitzert, seconded by Cole. Discussion there, council? All right, let's vote on that one, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
That passes 8-0. Next item.
Item 81, first reading an ordinance of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located at 2600 West 57th Street from the O Office District to the CN Conservation and RA3 Apartment Residential High Density District, number 17164-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the city of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Private applicant DGR Engineering, Jesse Morris.
This project is located at 2600 West 57th Street. Size of the parcel is 7.84 acres. The purpose is for the development of high-density apartment residential.
All right. All right, any one from the public want to speak on 81 here? Council, questions on this one? Councilor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kristen, talk a little bit about the traffic through this area. It's going to be, it's already kind of tough to get onto 57th Street if we put a high-density apartment building in this location, or have we looked at the traffic?
So the applicant is going to need to provide city staff with a traffic impact study. We've spoken with Shannon Austin about this, and she has requested that of the applicant.
So that'll be a condition before we pass this?
Yes, we will.
Or that it'll be completed before we do
She
second
would like
reading?
that to be completed before we hear this.
Thank you.
Other questions here? All right, look for a motion, set a date of second reading for the 1st of November.
So moved, Cole.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Cole, seconded by Sale. Discussion there. All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item, please.
Item 82, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located north of South Daylight Drive and east of South Highline Avenue from the O Office District to the LW Live Work District number 17165-2022 and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. Private applicant G&D Har Construction LLC, Gary Har.
This site is located north of South Daylight Drive and east of South Highline Avenue. Size of the parcel is 1.86 acres, and the purpose of this rezoning would be to allow for the development of office or fourplexes.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone from the public here to speak on 82? Questions on this one, council? All right, take a motion to set a date of second reading for November 1.
So moved, Branco.
Second, Cole.
All right, motion by Branco, seconded by Cole. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item.
Item 83, first reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property located north of West Maple Street and east of North La Mesa Drive from the AG Agriculture District to the CN Conservation RS Single Family Residential Suburban and I-1 Light Industrial Districts, number 17162-2022, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 6-0 with the following conditions. The 19-acre zoned I-1 Light Industrial District is limited to the WM form. Within the WM form, only manufacturing light land use is allowed for the construction of the single-family homes that are going to be placed within the Harvest Hills subdivision. Recommendation set a date of second reading for Tuesday, November 1st, 2022.
This site is located north of West Maple Street and east of North La Mesa Drive. It is also bounded on the north by West Benson Road. Size is 307 acres. The purpose for this development is for a single-family residential neighborhood and an industrial site for the purpose of constructing the homes that will be placed in this development. Planning Commission and staff recommend a condition be placed on the 19 acres of industrial land on the southwest portion of this development to limit the use to only manufacturing of single-family homes for the Harvest Hills development. This condition will mean that after the housing construction has finished, the industrial site will need to be rezoned to a zoning district more compatible with the single-family residential development.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Anyone from the public here to speak on 83 tonight? Council, questions on this one?
Move approval?
Second, Jensen.
Okay, motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen. Any discussion on the motion there? All right, let's take a vote on it, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that passes 8-0. Next item, item 87.
Item 87, a resolution of intent to amend the special assessment for activities within the Main Street Business Improvement District. Sponsors the mayor.
Dustin, good
Good evening,
evening.
Council. Dustin Powers, Planning and Development Services. This resolution of intent is just notice that the special assessment for the Main Street Business Improvement District is being considered for changes. Joe Batchelor with Downtown Sioux Falls is here. He was here on September 13th and provided informational about some of the amendments to the services as well as the assessment methodology that was going to be brought forward for the council's consideration. So this resolution of intent is just setting the date of hearing to December 6th. So that'll be our second reading. We'll actually be here on November 15th with the first reading of those ordinance changes. Notice of hearing will be published in the paper twice, 30 days prior to that December 6th date. We'll also be mailing notices to all of the property owners that are subject to this assessment 30 days prior to December 6th date as well. So this is just setting the date of hearing for that and outlining our notification process for that December 6th second reading for your consideration.
All right, thank you, Dustin. Anyone from the public here to speak on 87? Any questions here, council? For a motion, please.
So moved, McCoris.
Second.
Motion by McCoris, second by Bronco. Any discussion there? All right, let's vote on that, please.
Council members Cole,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
McCoris,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale,
Yes.
Star,
Yes.
Baranco.
Yes.
All right, that one passes 8-0. Any new business for us, council, tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move to public input on topics we didn't talk about earlier in the evening. 3 minutes per person on any topic. So if you're here for public input, come on up.
Hi, Hunter again from 5540 East Blarney Place. Just addressing something totally off topic here. There's obviously an election coming up, some ballots coming in the next few weeks in November. One of those measures is Measure 27, allowing possession or distribution of up to 1 ounce of marijuana by those 21 years of age or older. And I just wanted to kind of address, he's not currently in the room right now, but this was really intended to be directed to the mayor, suggesting that the legalization of marijuana would not make the community safer, it would make it more dangerous, which is entirely incorrect. There's a reason why the 18th Amendment was rescinded from our Constitution, because the prohibition on alcohol was ineffective. It created a black market, it created organized crime. And the reason why we're seeing crime in the city relating to the marijuana thing is because of the prohibition. It's because of the black market. It's not because of the leniency toward marijuana. It's sold in a disorganized fashion and in illegal fashion because there's no legitimate place for people to go and buy it. So the fact of the matter is, whether we like it or not, it's a vice that some people have. It's like alcohol, tobacco, anything else. Some people just enjoy doing it. We're not talking about giving it to children. We're talking about giving it to people 21 years of age or older. This is directly targeted to adults and what they do with their own bodies and their privacy of their own home. So it's important to, again, go after the drug dealers, have our police department go after people selling it illegitimately, but it's also important to create an environment where people can actually get it legally. That way there aren't any dependents on the black market to fulfill that need. And I get extremely nervous and irritated when government tries to restrict what people do with their bodies. I think it's entirely inappropriate. I agreed with what the mayor and certain members of the city council did during COVID. You guys left it up to the businesses and the individuals to decide what they wanted to do as far as vaccination, keeping businesses open, all that stuff. I'm glad we left that up to an individual's level. Some people roll their eyes at that. I don't really care. I mean, I come from California. I saw how bad it could get. So I agree. Sioux Falls is a well-run city in general because of you guys, because of the mayor. I've rarely felt unsafe in the city, but I don't want to live in an environment where we're putting up roadblocks to people's personal freedom should this initiated measure pass in the state of South Dakota. So lots of rights have been taken away from people in the name of public safety. That's kind of what this is about. Again, with California, our COVID restrictions and our Second Amendment right restrictions, all in favor of public safety. Well, it's just ridiculous. So I would just encourage people to vote yes on the measure for people who haven't voted on it yet. And I would encourage the mayor and certain members of the city council to just reconsider their position on that.
Anyone else for public input?
Sierra Bruce, Sioux Falls. So I'm going to piggyback on this because I'm going to put the brakes on him. Because first off, I don't know, we're not in California. Second of all, as an advocate on the streets, We had overdoses and people dying from 22 to about 35, 38. We had 2 overdoses, dead on arrivals in apartments and houses on South Menlo and AGP Studios. And it sure in the hell wasn't from marijuana. I wish the hell people would smoke marijuana. Then I wouldn't have to go in Duluth Avenue and Summit because people's on methamphetamines laced with fentanyl and doing crack cocaine and you should see how they act and bum rushing people and stabbing people and humping the ground and taking off all their clothes and running down the street. It's bizarre. You want to see somebody on drugs, you come down to 11th and Summit in Duluth. That's a crisis there. I wish I would supply those addicts marijuana so they would be calm and shut up and sit down somewhere on how they act on 11th and Summit in Duluth. Let me tell you, so I don't know where the hell he's thinking at, but I can sure bring him down tonight and I'll show him what a drug user is. Somebody high on marijuana versus fentanyl and meth here. Because we're in a crisis. So Pettigrew is nothing but the prison walls. Without the walls, it's the prison. We have everything in God's creation there. I'm out there every night. The guy that got stabbed up by Lucky Ladies was not because of marijuana. It was $200 he owed the guy for methamphetamine. I don't think that people would get stabbed over owing somebody $200 worth of marijuana. He got stabbed multiple times over $200 of meth, okay? Please didn't leak it out, but I'm going to leak it out because I was there, and I know the 2 individuals. Now, let's support the marijuana. They're going to find it anywhere on the streets to begin with. It's no big deal. They're not going to use the marijuana dispensaries because the strain's not strong enough for them, so they're still buying the dope on the streets, the marijuana. But don't come up here and say that they're scared of marijuana. You better be scared of the people on meth, the people that are trying to open up your houses to steal stuff so they can go get a hit of meth and act crazy and heroin. Nobody's going to steal over marijuana. Worry about your sex offenders, chill, because they're sitting here sexually assaulting people just to get a high because they don't know what they're doing. So these drug addicts have a sex history too on top of that. So I would worry about them too. You know, I mean, we do have crime on the streets, but it sure in the hell ain't marijuana. It's sure not in my district.
All right, thank you. Anyone else here tonight for public input? Good evening.
Hello. Just a brief reading from our state constitution, in particular the Bill of Rights. So you first go to section then number 27, maintenance of.
Please state your name.
Brian Burge.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to continue?
Go ahead.
All right. A blessing of free government can only be maintained by a firm adherence to justice, moderation, temperance, frugality, and virtue, and frequent occurrence of fundamental principles. I would encourage everyone to read our Constitution, and those who love our state and love the way it runs and runs the way it's governed, to frequently reoccur and readhere to those principles that are found page after page. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else for public input? Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Best for last. Let's make it a little lighthearted.
Yeah, no problem.
My name's Dan Aesop. I've got an address in the city of Sioux Falls at 7804 West Browning Street. I've also got a commercial property out on West 12th Street and some agricultural land out on West 12th Street and the TLS Road area. Mackenzie Huber at the Argus Leader did a nice feature piece of our property, and I made one of the comments in that article that it's great for me and my wife because she's a city person, she's in city limits, I'm outside city limits, and I'm a farm boy, so it works great for me. But over the years, my rights as a farmland owner outside city limits, those rights have been stripped. I don't have time to get into all of that in 3 minutes, but we've all heard the children's joke, why the chicken crossed the street. My rendition is because obviously the city needed $500 or the animal control officers have too much paper. I got a ticket because my chickens crossed over into city property. Now this is a really petty thing. It's the principle of the matter that I'm here to talk to you tonight about and remind you all that don't have agricultural background that South Dakota is an agricultural-based state. Even the Sioux Falls economy is rooted in agriculture, and South Dakota and several other states are still an open-range, free-range state. That means Sioux Falls has to build a fence if you want to keep my chickens out, not me fence my chickens in. But as reading the city codes, it would appear to me animals at large, if people choose to live in the city limits, I think that's who the code is more applying to. I don't think any of you were around when that code was written. But being outside city limits, that's being assessed on me. So animal at large, to me, that would be you're wanting to enforce rabid dogs or water buffalo, goring children, something like that. That wasn't this. This is chickens. Chickens walked across the street. And is this really the enforcement that we want our tax dollars, going towards? It's pretty silly. I've offered the city's attorney's office to dismiss it, but they want to keep pursuing it. And before I pursue legal recourse for several other things that my rights are being infringed on in the state and federal level, I just wanted to bring it up to all of your attention, the landowners outside city limits. We have rights to, and you are in control of a lot of the bureaucracy that's out there, the unelected people. So please reel them in. And I yield any other time to anybody have any insight on how does city code affect those who don't live in the city, like my case of a chicken crossing over. Any insight?
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Anyone else for public input? All right, seeing none, take a motion to adjourn us.
So moved.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.